of God for the people of God. So, as you know, we're in the middle of Lent. I know. Thank you, Captain Obvious. But today is the 5th Sunday of Lent, to be specific. I know this because when Pastor Jay sent me the lectionary theme for this week, I did a double take. I really wasn't sure if he'd gotten it right, so I checked. April 6th, check. 5th week of Lent, yep, all good. So why? Why is the lectionary theme for this week, quote, fill me with laughter? A bit confused, I Googled Lent for context and to see if I may be missing something after all these years. The internet basically states that Lent is a 40-day period of spiritual preparation for Easter, a time of reflection, penitence, and sacrifice, a time for solemn contemplation as we walk with Jesus toward the cross. It is often a season marked by fasting, self-denial, and an earnest search for spiritual renewal. No joy, no laughter there. But after digging into Psalm 126 in the lectionary, I want us to consider these two aspects, joy and laughter, that seem out of place, out of sync with Lent. The key here is to focus on the restoration and renewal aspects of Lent. Psalm 126 begins with people of Israel remembering a time when God had restored them. The psalmist says, when the Lord restored the fortunes of Zion, we were like those who dreamed. There's a profound joy in the image of dreaming. It might be rare for us, but have you ever had a moment when something good happened in your life and it felt so unbelievable, so beyond your expectations that it felt like a dream? That's the sense we get here. The people of Israel had been in exile, had faced hardship, and now they found themselves back in their land, restored by the gracious hand of God. It's easy to get caught up in the difficulties of life, to feel like we're stuck in a season of hardship with no way out. But God specializes in restoration. He takes what is broken, what is lost, and he brings it back to life. That's what happened to Israel. And isn't that what we experience, even in the smallest way, in our Lenten journey? Notice the joy that fills their mouths. Our mouths were filled with laughter, our tongues with songs of joy. God's restoration isn't just a spiritual reality. It's also a deeply emotional experience. Laughter and joy are the natural responses to God's intervention in our lives. It's the feeling you get when you realize God has turned things around in a way you never thought possible. And this joy was so evident that even the nations around them took notice. The Lord has done great things for them, they said in verse 3. Have you experienced this kind of restoration in your life? We are so blessed in our church to have many opportunities for respites of restoration, not only for ourselves, but for others. Rebuilding together, Wednesday night Bible study, Monday night lights are just 3 examples. Volunteer for one of Gina Lacey's Rebuilding Together projects. You experience the physical restoration of the home of someone less fortunate. But it's my experience that I come away restored myself through the hard work of the day of working together and the satisfaction of seeing the results of that effort at the end of the day, all while being a disciple of Jesus Christ through action. And if given the opportunity with the homeowner, maybe a word or two. I have to say, I was restored, renewed this past Wednesday evening at Bible study led by Jack Fenton. The first 30 minutes or so of Bible study every week is a social time with discussion and dessert. There's always food. I really wish I could have recorded that first 30 minutes Wednesday night and played it for you this morning. I have to say that since diving into this topic for today's message, I've been a lot more mindful to be aware of and cherish the sound of laughter. The laughter Wednesday night was just so uplifting, a real blessing. We really connect during this time. I also wish I could have recorded the closing prayer. In the same evening of such great, boisterous laughter, there was the sincere, heartfelt voice of a brother talking with his Lord and Savior, asking for healing, strength, and comfort to the many we lifted up in prayer. An evening of restoration and renewal. Moving on to verse 4, as much as the psalmist reflects on the past restoration, there's a plea for more. In verse 4, we hear the prayer, "Restore our fortunes, Lord, like the streams in the Negev." This is significant. The Negev is a desert region in Israel, arid and dry. The people knew that for the land to flourish, it needed water, streams that would revive the soil and bring life. When the psalmist prays for restoration, quote, like the streams in the Negev, they are asking for a revival, for God to pour out his grace in a way that will bring life, growth, and renewal. Sometimes, even when we experience God's restoration in one area of our life, there are other areas where we still long for his touch. Maybe you've seen God's faithfulness in one season, but now you face a new challenge. In Ecclesiastes 3, there's a time for everything. And in verse 4, it says there's a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. The prayer of the psalmist in 126:4 invites us to continue seeking God's intervention, not just for the past, but for the present and the future as well. God is not finished with us. He continues to restore, to bring life where there was dryness, to make streams flow in the desert. The last part of this psalm carries a beautiful promise. Verse 5 says, "Those who sow with tears will reap with songs of joy." This is where the psalm turns from remembrance to hope, from reflection to expectation. The imagery here is of sowing seeds, a metaphor for hard work, sacrifice, and sometimes even suffering. In farming, you sow the seed in the ground, but there's a waiting period. The seed must go through the earth, must be covered in darkness before it can spring to life. And sometimes sowing is accompanied by tears, whether it's the pain of loss, the difficulty of labor, or the uncertainty of the future. Again, this verse reminds us that we're in the midst of the struggle of daily living. It's not all good news, no rainbows and unicorns here. But here's the promise. Verse 6 says, "Those who go out weeping, carrying seed to sow, will return with songs of joy." There's a harvest on the other side of every season of sowing. The hard work, the waiting, the pain, it's not in vain. There will come a day when you will see the fruit of your labor, the joy of your perseverance. The tears that you shed in the sowing will be turned into songs of joy when the harvest comes. Paul's words in Galatians 6:9 say, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." Just as the Israelites were assured that their sowing in tears would result in a harvest, we too are assured that our faithfulness, our labor, our endurance will bear fruit. It might take time. It might involve hardship, but God promises that joy is coming. A reminder that this psalm isn't just about looking back at what God has done in the past. It's about looking forward with hope to what God will do in the future. The restoration the psalmist speaks of is not a one-time event, but an ongoing reality. God is in the business of bringing restoration and renewal, not just once, but continually throughout our lives. Our Lenten journey each year echoes this. Let us continue to trust in God's promises, knowing that no matter what we face, joy is on the way. Let us sow with hope work with faith, and wait with expectation. For God will bring the harvest. I want to end with sharing something with you from the lectionary that I thought was quite good. Restoration comedy, also called comedy of manners, was a late 17th century and early 18th century theatrical style that was all the rage among the classes in England and in the continent. Part of the reason for its popularity was that it made fun of the aristocracy. The lower classes loved seeing those with power made to look like fools, and those in power enjoyed seeing their colleagues taken down a peg, secure in the knowledge that the object of the joke was the other guy and not them. But in fact, while the antics of the upper crust provided the context of the comedy, it was never designed to question the status quo. And many historians believed it shored up the class system in the minds and hearts of the whole society. Yet boundaries were pushed. Another significant milestone of Restoration comedy was the advent of women. Oh wait, of course, women had been around before this period of history, but this is the first time in modern history that women acted on the stage in any significant numbers. In the Elizabethan period, young boys played all the female parts because. Not only on stage, however, the first women playwrights appeared writing Restoration comedy. That was a good thing, too, because the subject matter was, well, let's say, a little more palatable when presented between men and women. Ribaldry was the term that fit risque humor, flirtations, and innuendo. What was once taboo was now subject to public humor. Not explicit by today's standards, but earthy, human, real-life men and women, relationships and misunderstandings, longing and desire, failure and success, hope and disappointment. Anything and everything played out on the stage of human experience and played for laughs. That's how they got away with it, because it was comedy. No one thought to take it seriously. No one thought that humor could change reality from an oppressive social system into something more, something different, and yet changes were afoot. What was restored in the era of Restoration comedy? The year 1660 is considered the beginning of this renaissance in British theater, and it was also, not coincidentally, the year of the Puritan ban and subsequent closings of all the playhouses in the country ended. What was restored was the ability to laugh, to enjoy poking fun at the antics of human frailty and pretension, the joy of exposing human life at its most vulnerable. Our creatureliness was restored. Sometimes we get so wrapped up in the seriousness of our situations, the struggle and brokenness, the slights, real and imagined, from those who seem to be our enemies. We were overwhelmed by the tears with which we sow that we can't imagine reaping, let alone shouting for joy as we do it. Perhaps what we are begging for, praying for, is the ability to laugh, to hope again. Living as a person of hope and joy is claiming a fortune no lottery can award. Restore our fortunes, O Lord. Fill our mouths with laughter and our tongue with shouts. Shouts, mind you, not chuckles under our breath, not grins behind our hands, but shouts of joy. And with that, I return to the theme we started with one tweak on the pronoun. Fill us with laughter. Amen.